I'm not going to be ignored, Dan. Hi, yes, it's me. And this time around, I am going to be talking about the movie Fatal Attraction. Now, what has that got to do with books, and literature and writing? I hear you ask. Well, stick around and you'll find out. It's been quite some time since I have done a book review or a video in general. So I've got a little bit of a collection of books together, not that many, about 5, which I'd like to chat about. Some of my favourite books that I've been reading, including a Barbara Pym book. And I'm Stella, and welcome to my channel 30 Books, where I talk about Australian books, predominantly Australian books, to encourage you to run out and buy or borrow an Australian book to help our publishing industry flourish. As mentioned, I am going to be talking about Fatal Attraction. Now, I do feel like I look less like Alex Forrester, Glenn Close as Alex Forrester, and more like something out of the French Revolution. So off with my hands. Now, the reason I'm talking about this, I have been reading a fantastic collection of stories, sort of memoir, vignettes, microfiction, and semi-autobiographical work from a book called The Age of Fibs by Beth Spencer. And it is fantastic. And I do in particular want to talk about Fatal Attraction. Do you know that movie is 35 years old? Now, I read the short story first. I love Fatal Attraction. I know it's a hugely problematic film, and hear me out. So the short story that Beth has written is called Fatal Attraction in Newtown. Now, Newtown is a suburb, an inner city suburb of Sydney. And in this short story, the narrator, she has gone to see the movie. It's about the first time that she went to see the movie Fatal Attraction. And afterwards, she encounters the cast of Fatal Attraction on a bus in Newtown and also wandering around the streets of Newtown. And weaved in that is her breakdown of the movie. And really, when I watch the movie again, you absolutely get how violent and how normalized the violence is directed toward women and toward Alex in particular, and she even is violent toward herself, and how the audience is invited to participate in this violence. So she writes about the audience's reaction as well. The narrator also makes parallels between Alex Forrester and other mad women like Bertha Rochester from Jane Eyre, Ophelia from Hamlet, and also Madame Butterfly, which also features very heavily in Fatal Attraction. And there's some fantastic lines in the movie where, like, you as the reader really begin to side with Alex Forrester. You know, I'm not going to be ignored, Dan. And also that men are seen as passionate where women are crazy. And back to the Age of Fibs, it is a fib that women drive men to this type of behaviour. It is a fib that women commit these type of crimes, when in reality the most violence is directed toward women and also from their partners as well. Which brings us back to the name of the book, The Age of Fibs, and it's all about really the lies that predominantly women or girls and young women and women are told. And this starts from the very beginning about, you know, she writes in, there's a lot of it feels very autobiographical. And, you know, the lies begin, you know, just sort of lies we all get told about the size of our breasts, about getting our period, to Bigger Lies, which, you know, is about the effect that women have on men and the societal expectations of, you know, the way we're, you know, told to behave. Now, I'm making this sound all very serious, but within the whole, you know, all of the stories, there is quite a playful element. And my favourite story in particular is The Mummy's Foot. Beautiful. So it's a story, it's got some really lovely gentle observations, like this big momentous thing, something has happened in the family and they have had to go to the city. Their brother is in hospital and they're spending time as a family, and against the backdrop is all these momentous things that are happening in the country and in the world in general. It's such a beautiful book. I really loved it, and thank you so much, Beth, for sending my channel. I will link below where you can find the book. Other books that I have been reading, I'm going to start with my kind of favourite that I've read in ages, and I have to say it is not an Australian book, it's an American book. It's called Milkfed by Melissa Broder. I got it from the library, and my book group did it. It's fantastic. I loved it so much, and it's quite a raw book and it's honest, but there's something really tender and beautiful about it. It is really a coming of age story about a young woman in her 20s. Oh my God, who'd want to be in their 20s again? And she's discovering herself, and she possibly has a eating disorder. So a bit of a trigger warning. A trigger warning is the sex scenes. Oh my God. So she has a relationship. She is Jewish herself, but she's not an Orthodox Jew, and she meets a young woman who's an Orthodox Jew, and is sort of talks about their relationship and coming to terms with that, and also how she fits in the workplace, and again about expectations about her body, the way she looks. She's a very slim, bordering on skinny young woman, and what that means. And it's about her relationship with her mother. And this, what a fantastic writer she is in LA. I love this person. I love the voice Melissa Broder has created with Rachel, and that is Milkfed by Melissa Broder. This book quite some time ago, and I've been dying to talk about it. It's George Saunders' Lincoln in the Bardo. Came out some time ago. Now, a Bardo is a Buddhist state of being, probably similar to what the Catholics used to do. I think we've got purgatory, and it's kind of the in-between state. Well, the Catholics used to have limbo for babies, but they did away with that. Interesting how that happened. So in February 1862, the American Civil War rages while President Lincoln's beloved 11-year-old son lies gravely ill. Days later, Willie dies and is laid to rest in Georgetown Cemetery. Now, a grief-stricken Lincoln, what did happen, this part is fact, he was grief-stricken. He went to the cemetery to visit his boy, and I think he held him, and so the young boy, Willie, then is trapped between this earth and the other earth. And while there are many, I can only say ghosts, adult ghosts around him, apparently for a young child to be trapped there, it's a travesty. It is a grave mistake to do this. So the ghosts, like, they're trying to compel this young boy, save this young boy, to go to the other side. Now, all of these adult ghosts are very troubled and very problematic. And I started to read this book, and because it has so many narrators, I thought, I don't know where I am or what I'm doing. And then I listened to it in audio, and it is fantastic. It's a drama. It's a wonderful, wonderful drama. It's theatre, and you have people. And the narrator, the main narrator in the book, is Nick Offerman. He is a Broadway American actor. You probably know him as Ron Swanson in Parks and Recreation, and his real life wife Megan Mullally, who she has a smaller role in this, and David Sedaris is in it, like, you know, all these fantastic actors. Now, Nick Offerman is a very good friend of George Saunders, and even before George Saunders had finished writing the book or it had been published, Nick Offerman was saying, I want to produce this as an audiobook. So that's why this is so fantastic. It's got some really shocking parts in it. It is got it's hilarious in parts. It's very tender, very beautiful. There are a lot of text taken from archived newspapers. So some of the things that happen in here are true. So it's this kind of fantastical story rooted in real life occurrences or history, for want of a better word. So that's A Lincoln in the Bardo by George Saunders. I think it's about 10 years old, actually. What do you think, Alex? Did you like it? Mention a Barbara Pym book I read, Excellent Women, and by far this has been, I love Barbara Pym, but this book in particular is hilarious. Highly recommend. If you're not familiar with Barbara Pym, you might want to check out Sean the Book Maniac. He is a Barbara Pym aficionado. Now, speaking of Barbara Pym, I read not Barbara Pym as well. I picked it up at an op shop, a local country op shop, for $1.50, Joanna Trollope, the Rector's Wife. And it says here, like a Barbara Pym novel, though Joanna Trollope has a much stronger grasp than Pym on the tangled web of family life. She's also got absolutely no sense of humour. I will definitely pick up another Joanna Trollope book at some point. So it's set in village life. It's kind of interesting because it's really about empowering of women and also the expectations placed on clergyman's wife. Like, you're not just marrying the man, you're marrying the religion. But I found this book a bit strange in that the rector's wife, Anna Bouvier, she says these amazing things, but it seems to come out of left field. Like, it comes out of apropos of nothing. The reader has no idea these are the things she feels, and then she just says these really amazing things. Yeah, so curious to know what you think. Have you ever read any Joanna Trollope? Oh, she's an English writer. I think I'm going through a bit of an English phase at the moment because I've been watching a lot of Midsummer Murders as well. Speaking of English writers, I also gave Virginia Woolf's Orlando a go. This has been sitting on my bookshelf for, I reckon, 20 years, and I gave it a go, and I love Virginia Woolf. I love Mrs. Dalloway. I think it's fantastic. I love, of course, A Room of One's Own. I got really bored with this. Have you read it? Let me know. Finally, some Australian books. 2 books I did read. I read this ages ago. Charlotte Wood, The Weekend. Someone like Charlotte Wood's always going to be good. So it is the story of 4 older women who have had a lifelong friendship, but one woman really holds their friendship together. That's Sylvie, but Sylvie has died. So we don't actually meet Sylvie, but we get to know her through the 3 women, and her 3 friends come to her house on the coast, or her beach house, to clean up, and past hurts and come to the fore, and you all learn through the observant, omniscient narrator and very close narrator what they all actually think about each other and how telling it is. It's like a family when a parent dies that held the family together. What happens then? Like, do you actually have anything in common? Well, that's what these 3 friends are asking themselves. It's also about age. So I think they're in their late 60s, getting toward early 70s. Like, how do you maintain that relevancy? And what happens when you still feel like the young person that you were inside? And how are they all, how are they all behaving toward each other? And we don't always behave well when there's grief. I think Charlotte Wood is a very fine writer. The way that she is able to, it's not a huge book, but she is able to present these characters, all these different personalities, and they're not just archetypes, very close up, so we get a sense of that person and how they view the relationship. So it's all this push, pull, one person sees it, and who's got the hierarchy. There's also a dog in here as well. I would be curious to know that if another woman, not Charlotte Wood, who's so highly respected in Australia, had written this book, whether it would have been relegated to commercial women's fiction. I mean, I love commercial women's fiction, but it's interesting that this is considered literature. But maybe if another woman had written it, it may not have been. Now, speaking of commercial women's fiction, which kind of isn't another Australian book, is Larissa Behrendt, After Story. Now, Larissa, so this is the story about a mother and daughter who go on a literary tour around England. It's really interesting. So you've got these two Indigenous women who go on this literary tour in England of the most English thing you can do, like this colonial thing and visiting and talking about English books and English characters, and they're on a tour. So it's about the relationships with the people on the tour. It's about the books and the parallels between the characters in the book and the characters in this book, and also about the relationship between the mother and daughter, and the daughter and her two other sisters. Now, we find out at the very beginning, when they're quite young, a tragedy befalls the family, and how that impacts on the family and the community's reaction and the police's reaction as a black family living in Australia, as an Indigenous family. So there's that double trauma of racism. Now, the reason I did mention commercial women's fiction, I think, I kind of say I don't like to categorise, but I think there is a difference, even though this book has got ideas in it. There's something, I really think it wouldn't be out of place in commercial women's fiction, and I say this with great respect because I think it's really accessible. Like, it's not highbrow literature, and there's something, it's about story. It's all about the story and the characters and a plot, which that drives commercial fiction. So to me, this is commercial fiction, which is not to say the writing isn't good, because it is, but to me, it's the story that pushes it through. So that is Larissa Behrendt, After Story, and I'll put all the links to the books down there, and that is your 30 books. I would love to know what you think of any of these books, and if you've read, and when was the last time you watched Fatal Attraction. And I'll see you next time on 30 Books.